Call the order of the Township of North Huntington Board of Commissioners special meeting for Thursday, August 9th, 2008 at 7:08 p.m. Roll call. Manager Silka.
Commissioner Harold. Commissioner Bertani. Commissioner Blasco.
Here.
Commissioner Martino.
Here.
Commissioner Bevan. Here. Commissioner Casera.
Here.
Commissioner Higas.
Here. Could everyone please stand and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If any residents would like to speak tonight, you could please sign the book at the podium. Let the record reflect no residents are speaking tonight, no citizens input. Moving on, work session discussion topics. Manager Silka.
Okay, the first topic we have is our social media policy. As you know, we hired the technology coordinator this year, and we want to get our platforms going. And the first part of getting our social media platforms is a social media policy. And I provided you a social media policy draft that kind of outlines how we're going to do it, who's going to do what we're going to, what we're going to allow from an internal and what we're going to allow from an external comment section. This media policy has been vetted through our solicitor's office, and they came back with comments that were incorporated. Probably the one kicker is that we wanted to get our social media platforms up, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but we're going to make it clear through our postings that this is not a two-way communication street we're putting up. We're putting up it's an information push. We're not, through our policy, we're not going to engage in conversation, in argument, in anything other than maybe correcting misstatements or misrepresentation of facts just for clarification. And also, the one kicker is that, as far as deleting, we're going to put on filters for certain, words, for obscenities, swearing, etc. But, posting a comment that somebody doesn't like internally can't be deleted based upon, it is a freedom of speech, it's a public discourse. So if somebody posted, I don't like the way that, the board voted on this, it's not being deleted because of that. We're going to hope that we have a sustained positive discourse through our social media. However, we do need the platforms to be able to get our message out and keep relevant within, the societal changes of nobody goes to websites very, rarely anymore other than for work documents. If it's not Facebook, if it's not Twitter, if it's not Instant, if it's not Instagram, we're losing a lot of our audience. So I hope you read the policy. I tell you, Jonathan Beskid, who's our technology coordinator, he put a lot of work into it to draft this. That he was tasked with. It's not fun to look at policies and comb through to put together something that we can review internally and then submit to the solicitor's office. But I'd be glad to answer any questions you have of it. And he also put together kind of a target, of what we wanted to do with our social media and some statistics.
Jeff, are we putting any emphasis to the township employees while posting the section in here that says opinions expressed and actions taken on the social media account are exclusively my own personal opinions? Is that just something suggested, or are we kind of...
We can suggest employees to put on their personal accounts. We can't mandate it. I really don't want to become the personal Facebook police for our employees. But one thing is once the policy is adopted by the commissioners, every employee will get a copy of this and will sign off on it. Will be put in the into the personnel file, so nobody can claim that I didn't know about this. If there's no other questions, I'd like to have this considered at the voting meeting for adoption. Okay, my second point is just a little update. What I want to get in the habit to is maybe addressing the board on these work sessions of just some of the work product that we're doing that isn't ready to be voted on, doesn't need to be voted on, or so some of the goals we're fulfilling through our strategic plan, through our normal, work days. And one is the technology upgrade update. There's probably 3 issues that are going on right now that I want to bring the board up that we're working on. And one is probably the easiest that we've accomplished. Our capital budget, we had a printer budgeted for the administrative offices. Our current printer is 15 years old, I'd say, the youngest. It's not networked, it's not color, it's a big standalone printer. What we were able to do and came in, 50% of the budget that was budgeted is we got a network printer that is a scanner, because right now we have a flatbed scanner in the corner of one office that in order to scan, it's a 4-step process to scan a document in. So we now have, as of tomorrow, we'll have a network printer, color copier, color printer, scanner that will be a work hub that you can work from your desk, scan right to the person's email. It doesn't no longer have to bother Juliana or Lisa to scan something I want and then convert it from my email to somebody else's email. So that is something very easy that we got in. It's going to be networked. Everybody has the access to it. And we budgeted $20,000 for it. It came in about $7,800 for the new technology. So it's the newest upgraded technology. That's the easy part. Secondly, if anybody's familiar with our financial software, we are running financial software that's probably written before I was in college. It's a DOS-based program. It's privately held. It doesn't interface with Microsoft Windows or any Microsoft Office products. So what we're doing, we've engaged through our consultant line item, John Trant and Associates. They're doing an analysis for us to come back with a couple of the current financial software packages that we're going to upgrade. It'll be probably the first purchase in 2019. It'll be on the 2019 budget to purchase. But also as part of the financial package, we're going to incorporate a human resource package. Because right now, all of our tracking of vacation time, sick time, comp time, it's all done on, with basically handwritten notes converted into spreadsheets through our accounting clerks. You don't know, and then you have to compare your records to their records, and our payroll is done because we haven't been able to keep up with current technology. What we're going to do, we're going to have a modern payroll system that, even though we have a very strange way of paying, the way we pay, 35% mid-month, and we come back with some of our employees and make it up with deductions at the end of the month, and some of our employees are paid every 2 weeks. And a lot of these are contractual, but what we're going to be able to do is come up with a clean human resource payroll finance system that's integrated. And if we get lucky, we can actually incorporate this into our GIS system, so we can have different fees that are collected on the planning side integrated into the finance package. So that we're looking at that to be do the evaluation in the next 6 months, and then come back with a cost for the 2019 budget, because we'll probably have to upgrade a couple of our desktops, which are older models running Windows 7, which won't support the newest software. And also with that is we're looking to go as much as we can to a cloud-based server system. We don't want to have the physical servers that are high maintenance, high cost models that are subject to any time the power blinks, we go down. So we're also looking to migrate into a cloud-based system for that. We're definitely going to go in 19 for a cloud-based email system on Microsoft 365, away from the physical servers, and actually give the staff the ability to add, delete emails, and also any problems you have are cloud-based. And I've done this before at other places. For like a $5 a month fee per email account, you have no more ongoing maintenance costs. You don't have to bring a tech in to add an email account, delete an email account, put email on your phone. It'll all be done as easy as you log into an Outlook account with one administrator.
Do we have a generator here?
Yes. Yeah, we do backup. But once it blips, the server has to be physically reset.
You have to reset it.
Yes. And then third, part of I think the arduous strategic planning and budgeting process of last year, Tracer was a workflow planning model that was gives you remote access through iPads or handheld tablets to do work orders, to do real-time GIS mapping. We are in the process of coming up with the implementation schedule for that. It was budgeted for this year, so we're working with John Trent and Associates again to get that up, and part of that is going to be the integration of Tracer with the handheld tablets that we will then dovetail into making sure everyone's are compatible, that we have the paperless agendas next year. Now, I think that's been on, on the track, that we're going to be able to go away from the massive paper, go to tablets, give you some real-time views. We're going to migrate away from the projector on the wall to some screens and some mobile screens that we're looking at, especially now that we've saved on the capital budgeting on the copier. We have some extra money that we can invest in a meeting technology that'll help with when we upgrade the room. So those are just some of the ideas that we're working on. The strategic plan identified them. We're going to get those implemented between now and first quarter 2019 and get up and running. And with the finance system, we'll get it purchased in the first quarter of 2019, have it up and running by the second quarter, and probably by the third quarter be able to run it solo, because we will parallel run our two finance systems to make sure we're not missing anything. So I just wanted to update the board on that, so that you can see that we are working on it. We are spending the money that's budgeted in a manner that is budgeted. Any questions on that? Okay, third, I want to update the board on a problem project that we're in the process of hopefully getting rid of. We have a outflow pipe on Washington Street that comes at the end of North Huntington Township into North Irwin. It is a discharge of stormwater. It's ours, there's no question about it. And we have an obligation of 50 feet from the outflow of the pipe to maintain. The channel, as Andy's put it up, the channel has eroded away. It's meandering. There's some private obstructions that we're getting rid of in there. But we're going to come in and we're going to have to do some work because we are actually flowing it into a person's yard. Now, as we own 50% of the channel, North Irwin owns the rest of the channel, and their channel needs work. It's overgrown. It's silted in. And North Irwin doesn't have the ability or the manpower to do that work. And what we've talked about was, as whenever we mobilize to do that work, is enter into an intergovernmental agreement that they pay us our time and materials to clean out, their 100 feet of the channel past ours. And the way I propose it is we have, a true loaded rate of labor plus benefits of what it actually costs per man hour. And then for the machinery and the trucks that we use, the FEMA rates, which are generally accepted rates everywhere. If you're doing insurance work, if you're doing any claim, the rate that FEMA charges for everything. And FEMA has a rate structure. They'll go anywhere from a weed whacker to a Huey helicopter. They have hourly rates for. And we can incorporate that. And, I did say that I'd address the board because we'd like to get this done in the fall, that we'd have to do an ordinance for an intergovernmental agreement. But, we would do the labor, but we would have no financial exposure. And we would be indemnified through the agreement. We'd work with the solicitor that we'd have no liability. We'd simply be doing the work. We're there, we have the man, we could just continue to go down the street if the board is accepted to that.
That's fine. Yeah, thanks.
What I'll do is
Have you had any contact with them yet at all?
Yes. We met at the project. We had the Westmoreland Conservation District was out there, and that's where we decided that this might be the most expeditious way to do it. Because if we do our 50 feet, it's not going to solve any of the flooding problem. So, yeah. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Andy Blanco, our planning director, to kind of give you a little update on current trends in stormwater management. We have something we'd like to share with you. Would you pass those down?
Good evening. I'm not sure how many of you have heard this term before and how many of you are new to this. I think we've got at least 3 new board members that were not around when we got our original permit. What I wanted to talk about partly was stormwater phase 2. And you may ask what stormwater phase 1 is. How did we miss phase 1? Phase 1 was any urban area in the United States that had more than 100,000 population. Phase 2 was for all urban areas that had less than 100,000 population, but met the threshold of 100,000, or I'm excuse me, 1,000 per square mile. So most of North Huntington Township fits into that. Some of the more rural areas do not. But in 2003, we were required to get what's called an NPDES permit for our storm sewer system. Prior to that, NPDES permits were issued for industry, sewage treatment, any type of a chemical discharge or a cooling water type of discharge. But EPA decided that there's an awful lot of pollution that comes from runoff. If you've ever been in a shopping center parking lot, when it starts to rain, you can see the oil sheen and the antifreeze and the metals that come out of people's tailpipes, the litter, the trash, the dog waste, the fertilizer that was just put on somebody's lawn yesterday. All of that gets carried into our storm inlets, into our storm pipes, and eventually discharged to a stream. And I think the public has the perception that once it makes it into a pipe, it's somehow treated. They rarely see where that pipe dumps out into the creek and understand that that becomes the waters that we draw our drinking water from and that we fish in and boat in and so forth. So starting in 2003, North Huntington Township, as well as hundreds of other municipalities in Pennsylvania, had to get this NPDES permit for our MS4, which is an acronym for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer Systems. It's a 5-year permit cycle. Our original permit went until 2008. Our second permit went until 2013. Then they kind of dropped back and everything was on hold for a while. Eventually, we did get a new 5-year permit, and that permit will expire in August of 2019. We have to abide by the 6 minimum control measures, which are listed on the screen. We have done this through, we had an Eagle Scout several years ago that put pavement markers down at all of our storm inlets to remind people not to dump waste into those inlets. We have worked with schools, the STEM program at Hillcrest. I have spoken to Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, church groups, etc., to try and stress to them the concerns. We have gone out and sampled every one of our storm sewer outfalls at least once to see if there are any pollutants in the water. We work with the Conservation District to make sure that new development does erosion control measures. And we have done internal methods through our Public Works Department to make sure that we're utilizing best management practices at the Public Works Garage in terms of fuel spillage. And if there's an oil leak, there's absorbent material to put on the ground to soak that up. And making sure that what we take out of the street sweeper is properly disposed of. Our permit, as I said, will expire August 29th of 2014. And in preparation for that, the next round of permitting requires us to submit to DEP what's called a pollutant reduction plan. We are to hit a 10% reduction in the amount of particulates and dissolved pollutants that run off of our streets, yards, etc., and through our storm sewer systems. It's a very theoretical number because I don't think they're out there measuring during a storm to see the concentration of pollutants that are flowing down Long Run or down Brush Creek. But they've come up with theoretical best management practices that we can take, and you get so much credit for each of those that you implement. So we are working with an engineering firm, Lennon Smith Solar Ray. They have done a number of these for other municipalities, and fortunately, we are one of the later permits that's coming due, so we're getting the benefit of their learning curve with all these other municipalities submitting these to DEP. They will, this fall and early next year, put together a pollutant reduction plan to submit to DEP, and we then have to start an implementation plan. The cost of this potentially could make our landslides look like kids' play. We're kind of holding back to see, will they really follow through on this? What will they really expect people to do? Are there more cost-effective means that we can take? That's where I think we're in a favorable position, being one of the last municipalities that's going to have to submit their plan, because we'll get the benefit of everybody else that's already worked through this process. But that's coming. Now, the Westmoreland Conservation District has been very aggressive in trying to work for the benefit of all municipalities in Westmoreland County to address some of the needs that we're all going to have to meet. You may be familiar that the Turtle Creek watershed has a stormwater management plan that was passed, I believe, in 1994. We adopted that plan, and it set subbasins within the Turtle Creek watershed, which established release rates depending on what percentage release rate basin you were in. So if your site discharged 10 cubic feet per second before you developed it, if you were in an 80% release rate, you could release no more than 8 cubic feet per second after you developed the site. I believe the lowest percentage in the Turtle Creek watershed is 60%. But the whole idea behind that was to make up for past sins, because there was an awful lot of development done before there was any stormwater management procedures in place. We're still feeling the brunt of that. You know how the phone rings when we get a major storm event. Some municipalities like Penn Township have actually said it's just across the board a 50% release rate. And I'm going to explain to you how that has come about. But the Conservation District is putting together, with a grant from the Mellon Foundation, a county-wide integrated water resources plan that will look at drinking water, recreation, wastewater, stormwater management across the board. And there is a website listed at the bottom right corner of what I passed out, www.westmorelandstormwater.org. I would urge you to look at that. This is kind of an executive summary that will tell you what they're working on. They started this project 4 years ago, but they only had money for the first phase, and the money dried up. They couldn't go beyond that. So now they've gotten a grant, and they anticipate having this completely done in this calendar year, including a model stormwater ordinance, which will pass muster with DEP. We've been able to kind of hold back and hold that at bay, but we're going to have to jump on board with a revised ordinance at some point. If we can take advantage of all of the research work that they've done, it is certainly a much more cost-effective alternative for us. We met with them last year, reviewed all of our flooding problems in the township, and they took those all into account, and they will have release rates for the entire township when they do this final study. We have thought we've been doing a pretty decent job with stormwater management, because if we've got a plan that used to put out 15 CFS, we're now holding it back and putting out 15 CFS after development. But what happens in a watershed is when you have multiple plans that have stormwater management systems in place, there's a compounding effect that you actually get a higher peak, even if they all have stormwater management in place during a major storm event. So this is one of the reasons why it's important to maybe look at backing off that 100% release rate and going down to a 80, 70, 60% release rate. We're waiting to see what the Conservation District comes up with for their recommendations. I also just wanted to share with you that there's kind of a new paradigm in stormwater management. The past focus has been to collect all the water at the bottom of a watershed, put it into a big detention basin, and then slowly bleed it off back into the stream channel. What they're finding is that there are much more cost-effective things you can do closer to the site where the stormwater is generated to contain it, infiltrate it, hold it back. Probably easier done in an urban commercial setting than it is on a house-by-house, lot-by-lot basis, because we don't have the staff to go out and make sure that it's really being done. It's too easy for somebody to say, let's take that low spot in the back and put a swing set there, or we need another pad for our teenager's car. Let's pave that and make that a new parking space. But on a commercial basis, Jeff and Mike and Ryan Fonzie and I went on a tour in June to look at a lot of these commercial sites to see what other municipalities are doing. We visited Monroeville, we visited Mount Scottdale, we visited Westmoreland County Community College, York School District, Southmoreland School District. We made 4 or 5, 6 stops to see some different things that they've done that have met with some success as demonstration projects. This was a a neat project they did in Scottdale where they made curb cuts and allowed stormwater in the street to run into rain gardens. Not only did it provide some more greenery and aesthetics around the town, it provided a traffic calming effect. And they didn't really lose very many parking places. They did some work around their library and their city hall to create low spots that would capture water, and they planted special types of vegetation that will help filter that water and drink it up. At the Westmoreland County Community College, they took the lower end of the parking lot, which in the winter is where they pushed all the snow when they plowed the parking lot, and they made it a great big long bathtub so that it gave the water a chance to infiltrate, and if it overflowed, it would overflow into that catch basin that you see. So that seems to be the way stormwater management is going, is to try and do smaller projects, but more of them. The county has produced a very nice book, which they have made available electronically. They did send us about 20 of them, but their budget is limited. They couldn't print hundreds of them, which would have been great. But if we wish to do that, it's not copyrighted. It's certainly available if we wanted to hire a print shop to make some, maybe have out here in the lobby. That's something to think about going forward. But I just wanted to update you on that. I think it's neat to see so many municipalities working together to try and come up with this new plan. There's a committee of maybe 30, 35 people. I'm on that committee, and we've made tremendous strides. So if you have a few minutes and you'd like to look at that website, I would recommend it. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
That's all I have for my report.
Yeah, appreciate it. Plan and engineering topics, Mr. Blanco.
Okay, I just have one subdivision for you tonight. This is the site of the former log home, which has now been dismantled and I guess will be reassembled somewhere else. John Marino had bought that lot, and he would like to split it into 2 lots. It required a variance on the front footage, which the zoning hearing board granted, and we will end up with one very deep lot shown as Lot 2 and one not so deep lot where the log cabin was located. That's Lot 1. The 2 things he needs to provide are highway occupancy permits for the driveways. He's already done that work, and he needs to get 1 sewage tap for the additional lot. So that would be the only condition of approval. But other than that, his plan is to put a side-by-side duplex type of dwelling there, similar to the villas that we see being built. Planning Commission recommends approval of this.
Thank you, Andy.
Andy, would you like to do the CELDO?
Yes, yes. Don Housley, who is our consultant to the Planning Commission, has recommended, based on what he sees going on in the other municipalities where he works, that we adopt a procedure whereby every plan would come in, be reviewed, presented to the Planning Commission, and if it is administratively complete, they would formally accept it as complete, and then we would start the review period. As it is now, they come in, they're evaluated, they get to that first meeting, everybody's thinking, okay, we're going to get through tonight, and in reality, they may be missing some pretty key components that are required in order for that plan to be approved. So we end up with all these conditions on the tail end. The thought is, if all those conditions could be in place and satisfied when they come in, then we're not going to have all these lingering things at the end of a project. Those should be there up front. So what Don Housley has suggested, in accordance with the state MPC, Municipalities Planning Code, is that we would have a 10-day period. Planning Commission meetings are always on Mondays. 10 days prior to that, which would be a Friday, would be the cutoff date for submission for that Planning Commission meeting. That would then give staff 6 business days, potentially 7 business days to review that plan, see if all the components are there, present that to the Planning Commission at the next meeting, then they would say, yes, we accept this for review, or no, it's administratively incomplete. The applicant needs to be informed what's needed, and that would have to then be turned in prior to it.
Or are you gonna turn the application back to the applicant? In other words,
If it's not complete,
Yeah.
yes.
I wanna make sure that there's some noting that the application is going back to the applicant as incomplete.
Exactly. And the
So-
checks would not be cashed, so it would be a very simple matter to just say, here's your whole packet, back to you.
We might wanna have something that the applicant signs off when he submits it, that he understands that process and agrees to it.
Okay?
I mean, I'd like to have something, because I can see it now. I foresee an issue being raised if we turn it back. Somebody that might have some litigious background might accept that, or might take that as a submission to us, even though he didn't cash the check, but he submitted the plan. We've stamped the plan probably because we've accepted it in some fashion. Let's just make sure we have a document that clearly says to the applicant, you're not, by making this submission, if we find your application to be incomplete, we're gonna turn it back to you and your time period hasn't begun to run. Something
Perhaps
along that line.
you and I could work
can talk
together
about
on some language.
Yeah.
Our problem is the current subdivision and land development ordinance specifically says in the ordinance that the cutoff date for submissions is 3 weeks prior to the meeting, which is what we've been running with for as long as I've been here. In that is an ordinance, the only way to modify that ordinance is by ordinance.
Right.
So Jeff and I discussed this. What Jeff is suggesting is that we make it an administrative procedure, which we could adopt by resolution, that we have this 10-day advance submission date, and just delete that section of the subdivision and land development ordinance, which would have to be done by ordinance.
Yeah, we can do that.
But the question is, if this makes sense to you, then we can prepare an ordinance to be advertised with the language to change that. Well, it'll just take that out of the ordinance. It'll
That's
become
fine.
a
And I think
a
in that
procedure.
ordinance, I wanna make sure we have the language that we're gonna say to the applicant.
okay.
Put that in there, so there's no ambiguity about it. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, Bruce, you and I can get together and
With it.
wordsmith. All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Andy? Any other further board comments? Just need one motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Meeting adjourned at 7:00.